a top tip for finding architects as well is obviously checking Google reviews. So making sure people within your local area have 5-star reviews consistently. That's a good way of finding out architects. Obviously, word of mouth. So if you've got friends who have had work done, ask who their architects were, how their relationships was, how did they get on. But it's important, irrespective of whoever you use, make sure they're a good fit for you. So make sure they take care to understand, and they're not just slapping you with a price off the bat, because it just doesn't set the right tone for your self-build and the fact that you're trying to do things yourself and learn. So just bear that in mind. And another top tip I would say is, if you're struggling to find architects, go to your local council's planning portal. And what you do is you pop in the street name of where your development is, and it will display a public record of all of the applications that have been submitted into planning formally, and it displays all the drawings, everything. So you can see all of the planning materials for every single project, I think since the beginning of time, or whenever that portal was created, and see all the historic projects. But obviously you're only looking for recent projects, and what you want to do is match whatever you're doing with what you see on the portal. And then essentially you look through the drawings and you kind of see, 9 times out of 10 architects, they put their branding on the drawings. So then that architect built that, or not built, but did the drawings for that said house. So then you can essentially just contact that architect, ask them more questions, and maybe pick them. So this is just if you're struggling to find an architect, but always make sure that they're a good fit for you and whatever team you're working with, because you'll hear it in the future, later on in this video, that it's critical that you have an architect that you get on with. The architect that we decided to go with, shout out Brian, was really good, because what he did, which no other architect did, was he actually took time out of his day to come down. He actually picked me up from Croydon, drove me all the way down to East London to have a look at the project. And what architect in this day and age is going to do that? So yeah, he came in and he where we live, there's a greenway, like a long path, and essentially you can see on the back of all the other houses. And he took us along the greenway and look what he was doing. And I didn't know this at the time because I didn't know what precedent was. And what he was doing, he was looking at and analysing all the precedent across, all of the other houses, seeing what they had. Because as I said, and as I mentioned about precedent earlier, it's better to see what is the art of the possible in that form than it is to just come up with some creative mad idea. But because he had experience in property development himself, it was a perfect match for us, because he's done a lot of self-build projects himself, and so has his family. So it worked out perfectly, and he was a perfect match for us to support us within submitting our planning application. And what he did was he just did a drawing to get us through planning, rather than charge us, an arm and a leg for everything up front. He said, let me take you through planning, and then you can decide after planning what you want to do. So it worked out perfectly for us. So we didn't pay a huge amount, and everybody was happy. Then when it came to submitting the application, I wanted to submit the application myself. I didn't want any support to do it, because I thought I'd be charged to do it, right? So I did a bit of Facebook group searching, and this is a really good place to find people and contacts on Facebook groups, by the way, guys. So on Facebook, if you search in the search field, just put in something like, self-build groups UK, and you'll see like a whole host of groups with thousands of people in there, all giving away free information, free contacts. And there's also builders, architects, and all sorts of resources within those groups to help you with your project. But as I said, you have to be very careful, because there's no way of verifying these people. So you've got to use your own common sense by asking the right questions and vet these people yourself to make sure that you don't get ripped off. As for planning consultants, the reason I knew I needed one was because I tried to submit the planning application myself, and essentially I soon realized, filling out the fields, that this is something that I cannot do. So I needed to find an expert. I needed to find an expert. So it's so weird that we're the same Facebook group that I found Brian in, I also found Justin in, who is the planning consultant, and he helped take our planning application all the way through, from the start all the way to the end. There was a moment in the planning phase where they were going to actually reject our application because what they were saying was we didn't meet the floor space requirements, and we had to quickly react. And this is what I was saying, with architects, you need to make sure you've got a good rapport and make sure your architect's on standby, because we had to make so many minor adjustments, minor changes to the drawings at short notice. And essentially that could be the decision point as to whether your application gets rejected or accepted. So we had to react very quickly to make those changes to ensure that our planning application wasn't refused. And working between Brian, Justin and myself, we managed to mitigate every single detail. I don't want to go into exactly what was changed, etc., but just bear that in mind, because obviously I don't want to throw you off from what you're doing. Your case is going to be completely different, and just make sure that you consider getting a planning consultant and an architect, obviously, to get your planning application through the full planning process. And when you do find an architect, make sure you check that the architect is working with the planner, because there's going to be things that the architect isn't aware of from a planning policy perspective. And obviously, likewise, just getting a planner on board, you need an architect to do your drawings. So they kind of need to work in tandem, and you're almost the middleman as and when you need them to obviously make sure that it goes through. Or you just pay the money and you can just get your architect to just do it and just put the onus on him to crack on and do it. But as I said, this is a self-built channel, and the idea was that we wanted to kind of do it ourselves, or work closely with the people doing the work so that we could see and have eyes on what's going on, so that I can feedback this information to you and you can make a more educated decision to save those pennies.